Tonight on SIP episode 146, we are discussing wine caves, and specifically this winery cave behind me, where about 90% of the winery is underground. Tonight, Knights Bridge Winery walks us through a perfect balance and harmony of an eye to the future while honoring the past. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Martin Cody, co-founder of Cellar Angels, your direct-to-consumer choice for the best limited production wines coming out of Napa and Sonoma right now. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items for you. We are coming live to you from Las Vegas, so we are not in our regular at-home studio in Burbank, California at Universal Studios or at our Naples home. Because tomorrow night we are going to be pouring wine at a charity recipient winner. If you remember last year at the Tyler Robinson Foundation event with the Imagine Dragons, it is their charity, the band Imagine Dragons. We auctioned off during the live auction a private tasting event for 40. And the Imagine Dragons drummer, Daniel Platzman, was the winner of that event. So tomorrow night, we are honoring our commitment, flew to Vegas. We're going to be pouring 5 wines for Mr. Platzman and 39 of his closest friends and relatives. And it's going to be an amazing extravaganza. And we're also going to be raising money for another charity that he is on the board of. So great wine, just continuing to give proceeds to those in need. And what could be better than that for all of us that are wine lovers? So that's what we're doing in Vegas. And just from a standpoint of bandwidth, I'm not certain how the hotel Wi-Fi is going to be working, but if we drop or we freeze or get disconnected, you guys hang tight. We'll log back in because that's what's going to be happening. And I will share with you Cellar Angels from a standpoint of what we do and how we do it. If you haven't yet navigated over to the Cellar Angels website, please do so, because you will see on the front of the website a couple special offers. First off, the Angelo Cellars vertical collection, there is only one remaining. And this is all Stagecoach fruit over the years, I think, of 14 through 18. And 18 and 19 haven't even been released yet. And there is only one of these vertical sets remaining. We're going to spend a great deal of time talking this evening about the Knights Bridge KB 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon. But these 3 wines are highlighted. The Noble and the Degadillo were the most recent entrants into the Cellar Angels SIP kit, your personal kit for all of these SIP tastings. And of course, there's plenty more on the website, and each one of these wines has a story, and you can click into the wine, learn about the technical aspects, the background story, why it is special, and all the people making it special, including you that buy it. So I am thrilled tonight to talk to you about a topic that is near and dear. But before I do, the quiz question on Monday that we sent to everyone was, which of the following is not true of storing, aging wine in caves? And the answer was A, evaporation does not enhance the wine. And Sandy O is the correct answer, if that is a word. And I think that is 2 weeks in a row. Julie F, you were, and I don't see Julie, you were second. Brent H was third. Doug R, not Doug S, Doug R was fourth. Jim B did not make the top 4. So that is A, too much time on the golf course, or B, not checking email as frequently as he once did. But let's get to tonight's topic, wine caves, because anybody that's been to Napa eventually finds their way to a cave. And this cave that we're going to talk about this evening is perhaps one of the most extraordinary in all of wine country, Napa and Sonoma. And rather than have me talk about it, I would like to introduce tonight's guest, Doug Danielak, who is basically spearheading everything at Knights Bridge. And it gives me a great pleasure to bring Doug on, and he's going to be our tour guide as we go through basically the new Knights Bridge Wine Cave, which has entered through these doors behind me. Douglas, I'm sorry, I said Douglas, good to see you. Cheers.
Cheers, Martin. Thank you. And a shout out to, there's a few Dougs in attendance tonight, so I'll say hello to them first and welcome everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah, today's going to be exciting, not only for the wine, but we're also going to talk about caves. And Martin, do you have any comments to start us off, or would you like me to give a little presentation about our Knights Bridge caves?
No, I would like you to go before Knights Bridge and Give us a little bit about the Douglas story. Now, one of the things I found fascinating about the Douglas story is you're a graduate of from a Midwestern state.
I am indeed. I'm originally from the Midwest, from Michigan, and caught the wine bug quite early. And then my wife was kind enough to go with $500 and two suitcases to go study and live in Burgundy. And we did that for several years and worked with all of the small proprietors in Burgundy, and in virtually every instance they have underground cellars, right? So these are places where we were living and working and tasting wine in the caves every day. And it was and still is a magnificent experience as we go back very frequently. And you see how the wines, not only in barrel, but then in bottle, age so slowly in this environment. It is truly amazing. So you'll have Burgundies back from the 1940s, 1950s that are in really perfect condition just because of the environment, that they haven't been moved, you know?
So was this, so you graduated Michigan State,
Correct.
and what was your degree at Michigan State?
International relations. And then, so that's where I obviously picked up the language portion.
Sure.
And then we moved over to France, went to winemaking school in Burgundy, and worked with some of the top wineries in Burgundy. Frédéric Meunier was in my class from Château de Chambon-Musigny, Dominique.
No way.
Yeah, so Freddie and I are still best of friends, and I have a very good arrangement because I send Freddie my wine and he sends me back Musigny in return. So I'm in a very fortunate place.
It's funny because when we owned a wine store in Chicago, we used to carry his wines, some of his
Yeah,
wines.
exactly.
That's incredible.
So Dominique Lafont was who, and he introduced me into school, so I could get into school in Beaune at the Viti. And so we worked with Dominique, worked with Frédéric, and Christophe Roumier, all the great names of the Côte d'Or, and they still remain great friends. And, just delighted to go back and see them every year. And we just finished our most recent trip with Frédéric and his wife, Jocelyne, down in the caves. And it was just a super fond memory of working in Chambon-Musigny.
And so when you're there, you're 23, 24, 25?
Yeah, 25. Yeah, 25, 26. And this is a time in Burgundy also that, just as a side note, where it wasn't nearly as popular as it was today. There wasn't quite the appreciation for Burgundy and Pinot Noir at that time in the late 80s, early 90s. So it was really a question of bringing people around to the different estates. And my job,
Right.
which was the perfect internship, was to go to 8 to 11 caves every day, starting at 8 in the morning, finishing at 5:30 at night, and tasting everywhere from all the way from Chassagne-Montrachet in the south, all the way up to the Côte de Nuit in the Chambol and Gevrey-Chambertin. So it was couldn't ask for a better internship.
Seriously, talk about drawing the short straw on that one.
Indeed.
And so you came back to the United States, and I'm always interested in how folks decide, okay, where did you want to make wine, and did you choose California?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we truly did want to stay in Burgundy, and we had a couple of job offers, but there was, I think, some reluctance on the part of the French to have a foreigner inside the caves, and that's since changed. This is the 80s, right? But so we decided, once we understood we couldn't work there really, and the visa and the work visa would have been a bit of a challenge, but we came back to California, which is obviously land of opportunity to take all of our old world experience and bring it to the new world. So we've been very, very fortunate to work with small vintners very much in the same way, family estates, like you have at Knights Bridge, which are just, small family units. And it does give you, and hopefully your guests, an appreciation for, these are wines that are handcrafted. These are the people that are making the wine, that are pruning the vines, rolling the barrels, doing all the work. And there's just more of a connection there from the winemaking side, that you you certainly feel a strong connection that you're not making 5,000, 20,000 barrels of wine a year. You know every barrel, you know what's in it, you know where the wine came from, you know the forest of that, origin of that barrel. And so, just very, very fortunate to, on both sides of the ocean, to have been able to work with lovely people all the way through.
Yeah, and you can't have that hands-on, meticulous attention to detail on every aspect from vineyard to barrel and everything in between when you're doing 50, 60,000 cases. It's only possible to do it at the production you're at. When did you arrive at Knights Bridge?
I started at Knights Bridge at the very beginning when they bought the property in 2006. And when we came to the property, there were some older vines on the property that were done in what's called a California sprawl, which was a typical trellis system for that time. And since then, we embarked on a mission, which is twofold, of both replanting, but then taking those older vines and really protecting them and retrellising them to make really the world's finest wine. So we've had at our disposal every resource, thanks to the Bailey family, to sort of craft the world's best wine that is a perfect expression of Knights Valley and their property.
And was that kind of, Douglas, the mission when these families got together? Was it a passion project? Was it a hobby? Or was there earnest intention to say, we're going to craft the world's best wines?
No, absolutely. It's a total passion project on the part of the Bailey family and the extended Bailey family, that they really fell in love with Knights Valley. And one of the reasons was that it reminded them of Napa 30 years ago. So there are only two wineries in Knights Valley. There's Peter Michael and Knights Bridge. And so we sort of are mirror images in the valley. We look at each other, from each side of the valley. But the commitment to quality here is high as anything that you'll encounter in the wine world, and just very fortunate to work in that environment every day.
Well, and I want to show people a little bit about that environment, because many of you in the chat have been to Napa numerous times. Amy M, I see you might have been there 30 or 40 times. But I don't know if you've been to this property or this cave. So, Douglas, I'm going to share some of the pictures that you were kind enough to send our way, and you can kind of walk through this property. And you don't know which pictures I chose, so they could be, the barbecue that you had where things got off the rails. No, I'm teasing. So one thing I like from a standpoint of being in the service industry is how you're treated at a winery. And after owning a bricks and mortar wine store for 7 years, Cellar Angels is now in its 14th year. We've got 50, 60 trips to the valley. You can tell when someone has an impeccable dedication to customer service, and in that customer service, the customer experience. And this is just an example. I liked this picture for a couple of reasons. You can kind of see and you can talk a little bit about the food selections and pairings, but what you'll note is each glass is specific. Not all of the glasses are the same. You've got a white wine glass, a Pinot Noir glass, or a lighter varietal glass, and some of the red wine glasses. It's not accidental. That is a little extra touch. And the tastings, and Douglas, feel free to chime in on kind of the dedication to what you're thinking about with regards to the customer experience.
Yes. So thank you, Martin. I would say overall, I work here every day, and I think it is, clearly to me, one of the best places to visit in the entire North Coast. And the reason is both the owners and the architects have taken real time to change the winery experience. And instead of, in many cases, you'll go into a winery and there will be a bar or a table, and you'll do a tasting where you'll just be fed constantly information about the winery. And what they've done here is they've reversed it in a way that it's really focused around the customer experience. And it reminds me very much of Thomas Keller's TED Talk, the chef at the French Laundry, who said, here's the world's most famous chef, arguably, or certainly in the United States, And his comment is really, it's all about you, the customer. And I think when you come to Knightsbridge, that's exactly how you feel, right? You get to take in this beautiful, bucolic scenery, this beautiful vista that you can see here in the background of Mount St. Helena. And as you walk through the winery, you get to experience the wines one by one as you walk through, first the Sauvignon Blanc, then the Chardonnays, and then you go into the tasting salon with a full range of the wines. So you really have this curated experience that includes not only each varietal, the glassware is very clearly chosen to highlight the wines from our vineyard. And then also they do food pairings along with it, which is just, it's a delightful morning and afternoon visit. And often I join customers there and I enjoy it. It's the best part of my day. So it should tell you, as an employee who works there every day, that I'm taken with it every day. So I can't recommend it highly enough to your guests when you come. And it really does reflect, I think, the owner's passion, the owner's vision, and their sense of welcoming. They're very, very warm, just super welcoming people, very down to earth. And I love the fact that they've made their winery a shared experience with you. It is not, here's our winery. It's really about, come enjoy this with us.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, there's your neighbor across the valley.
Correct. There's Michael.
And getting back to the wine cave, which I mentioned, the entrance is behind me, and it's the only wine cave I know of in the valley. And someone keep me honest here, where literally the wine cave takes front and center as a participant in the wine tasting experience. So as you move through the winery, there are different, and here's the entrance as if someone is kind of walking out to greet you, and you are met down at the bottom of this hill and escorted up, and you're greeted with, just an amuse-bouche and some amazing, I think we were greeted with some Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc, I'm not certain, but not a bad vista to walk out the doors and see that every morning.
Correct. So that's our office view. And one thing that's really so thoughtful about what they've done here is that the view here is from the fermentation barn where the tanks are. So this is sort of the view from the tanks. And what's really great is that there's only one freestanding building on the property. Everything else is completely underground. Everything else is caves underground. And what that does is, it's obviously the best environment for the wine, but leaves a very low eco footprint, right? So we are not building new buildings that have to be heated and cooled, at great expense and great exhaustion of energy. It's all quite natural, set into the hillside. And the way they've situated it, this looks sort of east and northeast, so the caves remain quite cool. And so again, it's the kind of the ideal environment to raise the wine. And as you can see now from the front view, that building in front is 3,200 square feet. Everything else is dug into the hillside behind it, right? That's the entire winery, is really just hollowed out. And as you go through the experience, you're underground the entire time. And it's really, really beautiful.
And that one you said is 3,200 square feet. What is total square footage of the winery?
Total square footage is about 21. So you've got 14,000 plus square feet underground entirely, and including as you pop out into the tasting area. So all wine rests really quietly, and again, they both out of desire and the brilliant design of the architect, who's one of the most noted in the valley, they've kept this a really organic place that fits into the landscape.
And so one of the things I think that's interesting, and this almost looks like a miniature scale, but it's not. This is like a model, but it's not a model. I mean, these are actual tanks that you had built, specifically designed with Knightsbridge in mind, to kind of, again, foster through that natural, biodynamic, respect the earth, minimal footprint type of philosophy. Walk us through what you have here and why.
Sure. So here, this is what we call the Grand Cave. So as you enter through, this is the sort of entry to the cave as you come into the winery. But you see these beautiful concrete tulips. And in most wineries, they're in the shape of an egg. But what we did is we had a tulip shape made expressly for us. So no other winery in the world has this shape. And what it does is, not only are they beautiful to look at, but they're a little bit thicker than a traditional concrete egg, right? So the thermal mass here of concrete keeps the wine at a cooler temperature for a longer time than a concrete egg. And it has the same shape on the inside, so you get the benefits of the concrete egg, but with this really beautiful design that reflects our property. And when you come through, you'll see this tulip theme repeated, over and over. But these tulips, for example, if you try to heat or cool them, they move in temperature 1 or 2 degrees very, very slowly, just because they're in this cave environment. And they're ideal for Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. And we're going to start doing some more experiments with red this year. But it is a design that's unique to us. And when you come to the winery, this is certainly a highlight of the visit.
Yeah, you'll spend a little time here taking some pictures, because these things are just incredible and just stately, elegant, and beautiful. And this caught us by surprise on when we were there, because it just, we were dumbfounded with how it was white.
Yeah, very good point, Martin. So one of the things that was great is that as they hollow out the cave, they have a sense of what to expect, but the people who are boring the cave, they don't know exactly what they're going to find. And so when they reached toward the end, they found this type of soil. It's a volcanic soil. It's called rhyolite, which is found in the North Coast, but it's pretty rare. And it makes this beautiful, as you can see, this is just the natural stone. There is no enhancement here. This is where the drill stopped, basically. And it's a very compact yet friable white volcanic soil. Locally, it's known as tufa. And when you grow Cabernet on this soil, it has quite a distinct flavor. It's quite mineral and quite exotic when it's grown on this soil. And it's a perfect reflection of our property, since we have 3 distinct soil types on the property. And this rhyolite is one of those soil series found on the property. And it's a great place to come take a picture. I just touch the rock, see what it's like underground, and you see what the vines have to grow through to get their water and nourishment. It's really just a beautiful spot.
It gives you a tremendous appreciation for the struggle of a vine and the roots, to your point that you just said, going down 10, 20, 30 feet to find water, to find nutrient. And I've always marveled at how that struggle and the intensity of that struggle then is manifested in the berry and producing exceptional wine. Going back to the tulip stone, how long do you keep the juice in there?
So back to the tulips, to the concrete tulips, they'll stay, in the case of Sauvignon Blanc, anywhere from 6 months. In the case of Chardonnay, 12, even 18 months in the tulip. And the tulip is just a different environment. It's a different vessel than a barrel. But what it allows the winemaker to do is, between the different flavors that come from the concrete and barrel, you can create complexity, right, in the wine by blending them together. Well, look at this.
That was not in your slide deck, but I'm gonna make a recommendation. It should be. No, I'm just teasing. But yes, this is some great Cellar Angels ambassadors, the Mannings. But this was our trip out there this past summer, or I can't even remember when. But there's an Instagram photo opportunity available. I didn't want to put in the tasting salon because I want people to be surprised when they see it from that standpoint. But it truly is an exceptional tasting experience that you're going to marvel at, and you're going to want to go back. I do want you to talk a little bit about, Douglas, when you excavated that cave and what the county requirements was and how you basically, for all intents and purposes, turned lemons into lemonade.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that was a part of the cave construction was the county mandated that we keep all of the cave tailings, all the soil that was excavated, and keep it on the property. We could not move that soil off site. So our vineyard manager came up with a brilliant idea, and he said, well, look, you've got all three soil types on the property, and as you excavated the cave, you can see all of those emerging in the cave tailings. And what he did is he took the cave tailings and made a single vineyard out of it. And to give you a sense of how many cubic meters there were, I think there were 22,000 cubic meters, is that we put it in a new vineyard, we leveled it out, and it raised the level of that vineyard by 3 feet over an acre. So it gives you a sense of how much was taken out. And we're so excited because there's young vines there now, and next year will be our first year where we'll get fruit from that parcel. And it really is this sort of organic evolution of a soil type that comes from the property but will contain all three types. And to your point, Martin, that we were discussing earlier, this is something that would have taken millennia to happen, and just by serendipity here we've created this beautiful parcel. So when you come, you should not only visit the vineyard but taste the wine that comes from it.
Yeah, and what varietal do you have planted there?
So we actually put all three. We put Sauvignon Blanc,
Okay.
Chardonnay, and Cabernet, just to see what the effects would be on each varietal. So it'll be really fascinating to see the outcome. I expect the wine will probably have a little more of the rhyolite character, that white soil we saw earlier. And that soil, as you can see, is not very rich in nutrients. So the vines have to work a little harder to get through that soil. And I expect there'll be wines of great intensity in all three varietals.
Oh, that's fantastic. With literally, I don't know what percent, probably 80 to 90% of your winery in a cave, and caves go back hundreds upon hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years. Why caves from a standpoint of storing wine, aging wine, and economically, I know these things are not cheap to build.
No, they're not. And so it's interesting because the fellows who excavate the cave, they'll tell you very simply, it's like, we do the geological study, but we don't know day to day what we're going to run into. So in a given day, they may move 30 feet, and then the next 2 days, they may move 4, right? Depending on the soil type and the shoring up the walls and doing all that work. But why caves are an ideal environment for wine, and this has been seen in the old world, of course, in Champagne, in Burgundy, and now in the new world in Napa. It's really just the ideal environment for aging wine. It's low light, there's really no vibration, very few temperature fluctuations, which is really very, very important. And it's this usual perfect combination of temperature and humidity. So it's not much different than the wine you.
Hold on 1 second, Douglas. I lost your audio.
Down, but it allows for this long, slow aging of the wine in barrels. And obviously this has stood the test of time and generations in terms of a perfect environment for wine.
All right, stop right there because we lost your audio in the middle of that, but now we're back. So we have, and I don't know what happened, and I just went white because I was scared apparently, so I have to go back to color. We talked about temperature, low light, humidity, the moisture aspect, low vibrations, and again, it's also safe from any of the hazards above ground like fires and that sort of thing. But what did you say there in the middle as why it's so good for aging and storing wine?
Yeah, so it's this combination of temperature and humidity, and it allows for long, slow aging of the wine. The wine doesn't hit temperature extremes of hot or cold. It's a very constant environment. So that allows the wine to develop in a very even way. So as the oxygen is exchanged with the wine in the barrel, it's happening on a slow and very regular pace.
Interesting. And is there anything from a standpoint that's bad about using caves other than the cost to build them?
There's not a lot of downside. It's an environment that you like to be in. Sometimes in cellars you will find in Europe there's mold growth that can start, going inside the cave, and that can be a bit of a challenge. And in fact, in Burgundy, you'll find it on the walls, and it will be several inches thick, right? And what they've learned is that even though there's this mold in the environment, it doesn't really impact the wine as long as you don't disturb it, right?
Right.
They've found that cleaning it up is a bad idea. It kind of makes its own natural seal, where if it's there, it's there. You're not going to be able to get the chlorine out and clean it, and nor do you want to. They just leave it in place, and it creates this sort of extra layer of cooling environment. And but in terms of downside, no. I mean, I love working in caves. I love the environment, and just because I know it's perfect for the wine.
Well, and it's interesting. You're right about that, the mold and the spider webs and stuff like that. And we've heard it time and time again from longstanding producers in Burgundy, even more so in Spain, where you have these, it's its own little ecosystem, and the American consumer will go in these caves and want to get rid of the mold, and they're like, no, don't touch the spider webs, don't touch everything. They've been living harmoniously down here for 400 years. We're fine with that environment. I do want to launch a quick poll question, so see if people have paid attention. Oops, hang on. Let me go back. Didn't want to launch that one first because that was a pop quiz. So Douglas didn't mention this, but this cave, as you can see from this pictures, probably didn't happen overnight. So how long has Knights Bridge been working on building this winery in this cave? 3 years, 7-ish years, 15 years, 21 years. Now, I guess by deduction, you could probably come up with, say, 17 years, because that would be, you got there in 2006 when the winery was founded. And maybe since that point in time, I don't know, or maybe they did decide, 10, 15 years into the project, they said, we need a cave, like a lot of them do, and then realize, well, maybe that's easier said than done. But I'm going to give people 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1 second. And so no one thought this was a quick decision and you got done in 3 years. You're all correct. These are not easy things to complete, especially with permitting and those sorts of things. I can't imagine. But share with people, Douglas, kind of the extracurricular items beyond just the construction. And I'm specifically referring to neighbors and the timeline it took from basically, intent to completion.
Right. So the vision for building a winery started in 2006 when they acquired the property. They didn't know exactly what it would look like then, but they had the intent of building a winery. And in Knights Valley, other people have tried, and the neighbors in each case, the local constituents, really fought every one of them very, very hard. So the Baileys, being just people that are super committed in so many of their endeavors, they really proved to the community that they could be great neighbors and good stewards to the land. And it took a permit process of about 8 years just to kind of go through the county, get all the boxes checked, everything environmentally. And I have just enormous respect for them in that they did everything as you would expect, by the book, every environmental box, everything about erosion control was done with the utmost care and the utmost time. And they put really all their heart and soul into it. And then the actual construction of the cave only took about 2 years. It started in 2000 during the pandemic. And they kept boring out, every day. You just watch the progress as they move through with the mining machine. And then the winery opened just at the beginning of the 2021 harvest. So we were virtually just before harvest, putting tanks in and putting all the equipment in just before harvest. So the actual cave construction itself was remarkably streamlined, but the permit process itself, to make sure that you had everyone on your side in the neighborhood, that you had proven that you're going to be a good steward of the environment, not only during the construction, but for decades to come, for generations to come.
Right.
And now, I think everyone that we come in contact with is very, I think, respectful and really recognize what the family has done to build this beautiful place.
It's an incredible property, and it's amazing. It's so unique from that standpoint of it being nearly everything that you experience is underground. I do want to kind of show some folks the history of wine caves. And to do that, we're going to go to our favorite friend, Google Earth. And in doing some research, if you go back to third grade social studies, you learned that civilization basically started in Mesopotamia at the Tigris and Euphrates River. So here you have the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And interestingly enough, this is, I think, in modern day Iraq or Iran. The first wine cave is right up the road. And this is in Armenia, and I'll pan back. But as you know, when we talk about wine regions, and specifically great wine regions around the world, every single one of them has a maritime influence. So there has to be water nearby. Basically, it works to create different microclimates, influence breezes, whether they be coastal breezes, coastal fog, and that sort of thing. But this cave is, let me find some photos. This is 4000 BC. And that's a long time ago. And so here they have stairs up to these caves, and this was actually a working winery. So you can Google this, the first winery, and they found storage vessels. They found presses in here. And this is actually where they brought wine from, probably right over here in these vineyards, up into this cave and stored it. And it was discovered in 4500 BC. Absolutely fantastic. And you can see how incredibly steep this land is. This is not for the faint of heart to be making wine in this topography, and it's still agricultural today. So it's very interesting to see that here at the birthplace of civilization, we have our good friend wine. I'm kind of happy about that it goes back that far. Douglas mentioned one of the places that he was able to work and visit and play. And see, there's our slow hotel Wi-Fi. With regards to this beautiful facility, which I'm sure looks familiar when I get down on the street.
Absolutely.
Now,
That's the School and Bone.
Yes. And how many years were you there, or how long?
Just about a year and a half. And then I completed my studies at University of California, Davis over on this side. But the Vidi in Beaune is just such fond memories because all of the famous names of the Côte d'Or were in my class. And they were very, very helpful. And they mercifully let me skip the French accounting class.
I wish they would have let me skip the United States accounting class. I can't even imagine the French one. So now buckle up, because this one, we'll see how this gets a little dizzying. So this is where the Cellar Angels team and faithful focus in our wine region is obviously Napa and Sonoma. So it is interesting here. You have, again, significant amounts of water, and Douglas knows better than anyone just how much of an influence that is, particularly in this region. And it is juxtaposed with its climate being a Mediterranean climate, of which only 3% of the world has that type of climate. So you have fantastic maritime influence. You have the Mediterranean climate, which gives you fairly predictable rainfall and temperatures throughout the year. But then you also have the topography that we talked about a little bit earlier with the volcanic influence, the ridge shifts, the rivers that are running through all this. So there's very few canvases like these two counties in the world with which to craft world-class wines. And it's a pretty exceptional playground. Knights Valley is just north of the, and this is not drawn to scale, so any of you geosatellite people out there say my boundaries are too far south, that you could be right. I'm just making certain that you can recognize where things are. But the Knights Valley, you mentioned, Douglas, that there's only 2 wineries in Knights Valley, and it has some pretty unique soils. It has some pretty unique topography. What drew the Baileys there, and what did you first encounter in 2006 when you decided to kind of pay a visit and fall in love with the property?
Well, I think they fell in love with the property for a few reasons. Is that first, you can sort of, create this identity. It is the easternmost sub-appellation, Knights Valley is, of Sonoma County. And it is just north of Napa. So you have this sort of, bridge between the two counties. And there are very few spots in the world, and Knights Valley is one of them. I think this was part of the appeal, where you can grow world-class Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Cabernet all on the same property. There are other areas in Napa, Sonoma, where you're only really suited to 1 or 2 varieties. Mm-hmm. Here in Knights Valley, you have the chance to make world-class wines from all 3 of those varieties. And that's been proven not only on our property, but with our neighbors and other people producing in the area. And it's very, very interesting, because as you leave the northernmost point of Napa Valley, which is Calistoga, it's only a short 7-mile drive. You cross the county line and you're in Knights Valley. So a lot of similarities, but yet enough differences between the 2 valleys so that you can do successful whites and reds in Knights Valley, whereas in Calistoga, there's really very little white grown anymore in Calistoga. So I think that was part of the appeal, certainly the bucolic nature of it, a place they could make their own and sort of share with the world. And I also love the history that we look out on Mount St. Helena every day, which was certainly a perch for the writer Robert Louis Stevenson. Sure. Spent a lot of his time in the late 1800s on top of there, and he's already describing the great vineyards of California and Napa, looking down from his perch and looking down on Knights Valley, already describing some of these early vineyards. So you kind of sense that history. And for those of you who have visited the valley, there's the famous signage as you come in and out of the valley that contains his quote, "And the wine is bottled poetry," on 2 large wooden billboards, if you will. But if you want to do more research on that, is Silverado Squatters is probably the one where he discusses his time in Napa and Sonoma most.
Oh, that's fantastic. I will do some research on that. The tasting experience is unique, as we've discussed, but I also think you've done a marvelous job of kind of marrying and combining old world philosophy with modern technology and modern design. So kind of bring us up to speed on your intent there, directing some of that approach to winemaking, moving to organic, and having this state-of-the-art facility, and what that allows you to do from a wine production standpoint.
Yeah, sure. So I think we've done a lot of things that are both innovative, integrated a lot of technology, but not at the expense of wine quality, never at the expense of being able to touch the wine, take all the time we want with the wine. And good examples of that in terms of resource management is that water, wherever we are in the world now, we have to be very conscious of. And every morning, the first thing on our work list is to record the water use every day. So we do all kinds of extraordinary measures to preserve every drop of water. So instead of, for example, cleaning tanks with an abundance of water, we use a blue light, UV light to sanitize the tanks, and that cuts down on water use.
Hmm.
Another big innovation is when we do the maceration of the red wines, which is during the pump over, that would be traditionally done from someone at the bottom of the tank and with a pump, and then they pump the wine over the top manually, and they're standing on top of the tank. And what we've done is built the pump over design right inside the tank. So what would take, for example, an intern a full day to do pump overs throughout all the tanks, we've built it into the tank. So instead of taking 20 hours, we can get all that work done in 6 minutes with a computer.
Jeez.
And
Wow.
so what it does is it's actually gentler action on the wine, the way we've designed it, right? Versus the hand pump over. But then it gives us more time to be with the wine and work with the wine during the pump over process, rather than spending all the time and energy just on that physical part of winemaking. So those are just a couple of the innovations that we've done in terms of modernizing the process, but never getting away from being able to treat the wine in the most artisanal way. And, you know, I think for us that really is paramount. How do you have an eye to the future and also respecting tradition at the same time? And I think they've done that brilliantly here.
No, that's actually a great phrase, and I'm going to steal that when we start sending people there, because I don't think there's a better representation of that philosophy than Knights Bridge. Congratulations to the team. I do want to talk about a little bit about the portfolio, and specifically the KB 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon that folks are drinking this evening. So one is that one. Yep. Good job. Great product placement, Douglas. Thank you on that. The What is the portfolio, not only from a varietal selection or varieties, but also from case production and today, and then where do you want to go with that eye to the future?
Sure. So it's a great question. Our winery is permitted for just over 10,000 cases. And right now that breaks out into about 7,000 cases of red and 3,000 cases of white in big terms. We make Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and all the Bordeaux varieties, all 5 Bordeaux varietals on the property. We just acquired an additional 30 acres from our neighbor, and that will bring us up to sort of that 10,000 case level, where, you know, at this point, it may push us a little bit over, but we don't have this aspiration of saying, oh, well, we need to be 60,000 cases and, you know,
Right.
or anything like that. It's still all about a reflection of the property. That is really the focus of everything that we're doing. So, and I think it's important to mention, as we went back and said, why Knights Valley? It's like, well, this is a place that can produce world-class Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Bordeaux varieties. What's really important, I think, for your team that's joined us today is to understand that the wines of Knights Valley have this varietal signature, which is just it just can't be beat. And so when we teach classes at Napa Valley College to young wine enthusiasts and young winemakers, when you take your class Wines of the World, you say, okay, what is Sauvignon Blanc supposed to taste like? What is Cabernet supposed to taste like? We bring wines from Knights Valley for that class, right?
Wow.
because the grapes age so slowly and so gracefully that they capture the true varietal nature of each varietal. It's really the signature of Sauvignon Blanc, the signature of Chardonnay, and the signature of Cabernet that really reflect its origins. And so I think that's important, in that when you taste these wines, and the wine you're tasting tonight, it does capture the true breadth of Cabernet Sauvignon. You've got the fruit there. You've got the sort of beautiful herbal part of Cabernet Sauvignon, the beautiful spice part that is part of Cabernet grown in a cooler climate. And I think that is really a hallmark of Knights Valley and of Knights Bridge.
That's awesome. And it's interesting because it's a great segue for a question, another poll question, our last poll question this evening. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Douglas. Douglas doesn't know this question is coming. So Douglas's favorite wine is Knightsbridge Tocolone Cabernet. Wow, someone firing off quick on the any white Burgundy. Blanc de Blanc with some age on it. And you were just talking about varietal specific, fingerprint, bringing these particular wines to the college to taste, and that's typicity from a definition standpoint. So he did not collude with me to do this sort of thing, but any wine expressing typicity, regardless of where it is in the world. And I don't know the answer to this, but I thought it would be interesting because we get asked, Douglas, this question all the time. And I'm sure you do as well. So I have no idea what the answer is. Might not be any of these. But I'd be curious your thoughts on if there is a favorite wine, what do you find yourself gravitating to, that sort of thing. But I'll give these folks about 8 more seconds, because 8 seems to be a good number today. 7, 6, pencils down in 5, 4, 3, pencils down. Not many people probably even know what that means anymore. 2, 1. One additional. So no one fancies you a sparkling person, young man.
That would be my wife, Mary. She would fill out that poll in a hurry. But I have to agree with your audience on the last one, is any wine expressing typicity, because I think as winemakers, ultimately we are stewards of a place. It's not about the winemaking that you're putting into it. I think you've succeeded most as a winemaker if you've brought out the expression of place. And I think that just comes from my Burgundy training. And so whenever you get wines that speak of place instead of process, to me, that takes us right back to nature and what wine growing and winemaking is really all about.
Awesome. I did have one other comment on something you just mentioned. You said you recently acquired 30 acres of land. Correct. That is not a small parcel. Right. And my guess is that if it's right near the estate, it had to be a neighbor's.
It was a neighboring property, and we had known them since we bought the original Knightsbridge property in 2006. And as they went into retirement, they understood that there was a great legacy possibility here to have this become part of Knightsbridge. And it's very, very exciting because, of course, they grew Sauvignon Blanc and Bordeaux varieties on that property. And we're doing exactly the same thing as we did with the original Knightsbridge property, is that respecting some of the old wines that are there on the property as we continue to then replant and redevelop it. And it's just very, very exciting. That adds something new to the portfolio. And again, it expands our production a little bit, but it's not with the goal is not really the production increase. It's more about us being able to respect quality and have this reflection of Knights Valley.
Well, and I think in a strong manner, what it also does is it validates the commitment, the kindness, generosity, and authenticity of the Baileys and the partners, because we have all heard of neighbors that can be combative and that sort of stuff, and they invested 8 years of time to get the permitting, and you can say all you want, but what happens is what you do. And that's what people is the hallmark of someone with character. And there's character in wine and there's character in people. I don't think the neighbors would have sold their 30 acres had they not believed in the vision and seen, after 17 years of living alongside, just the way the group and the owners are in fact stewards of the land. And they can talk a great game, but if you can walk the walk and talk the talk, and over 17 years of time, for someone to just say, yeah, we'd like to sell you our property, I mean, that is a huge compliment and great validation of just their commitment to this area.
Yeah, and I couldn't have summarized it any better, Martin. Thank you. And I don't know when we wrap up, but I just want to take 2 minutes to thank you both at Cellar Angels. We have a lot of partners in the wine world, and we run into a lot of people in our wine lives, and we couldn't be more thrilled to be partners with Cellar Angels because of their commitment, their knowledge, their understanding, but also their really warm-hearted approach to wine. And very much the same way, they're committed to you, the subscribers here. And when we do these, they put a lot of effort and a lot of planning into it. So really, lots of kudos to you, and we're just delighted to be partners with you.
Who's cutting onions?
No, it's true.
Thank you so much. That's very thoughtful and very kind, and we greatly appreciate it. And one of our most important team members, Ivy, is on this evening, so she's really the one responsible for all of that. But it's folks like this and who you are doing for the wine service, Douglas, and the team there, and Derek and everybody, and Alicia. I mean, it's just, I encourage Sipsters, you need to see this property. You need to get north of Calistoga, jump over to the Sonoma Range, and see anything with regards to get an appointment at Knights Bridge and go there. Douglas, I can't thank you enough. How do folks visit, since I just told them all to go visit?
Yes, you can reach us any way, through social media, call us directly, contact with Alicia, who's our director of direct sales. And when you come to the winery, you'll also be greeted by Derek or myself. So part of the winemaking team, we always take time with visitors. So when people have questions about how the wines are made, or what to expect, or what they're tasting in the glass, I think that's another really unique feature of what we do. So you can reach us on the website, and reach out and book a tasting. And when you do, leave a good amount of time in your day to see Knights Bridge, because once you get there, most of the comments from visitors is, we don't want to leave,
Yeah.
So that'll give you a good way to plan. But yeah, the whole staff is super welcoming, and we can't wait to see you when you do come.
Awesome. And the one last question on the 2018 KB Cabernet Sauvignon, we talked aromas and some of the flavors. What would you pair with that?
For me, I love this with any kind of red meat. I'm a big fan at this time of year of lamb, dishes, and we're getting to fall, duck, quail, but really traditionally, it also goes really well with grilled meats like steak, barbecue. So those are the things I really gravitate toward, because they all reflect Cabernet beautifully, right? You go back and forth between the rich dish and the meat and the Cabernet Sauvignon, and you'll find that the wine opens up beautifully over time, over the course of the meal. So I think that's why those are really good compliments.
And last question, I just fibbed when I said one more question. This is the last question. 2023 vintage. I know it just wrapped up 24 hours ago or less. Give us your overall impression of what this vintage was like.
I think it's a fantastic vintage. So it is a combination of decent volume, but super high quality. And why that is that it was a very cool year. Took a long time to develop on the vine, but it was a huge, late harvest. So there was no exaggeration of heat and anything else. And what that allows is that the grapes just keep developing flavor over a very long period of time. So what we're seeing early on are wines that are really expressive of place, They're also a little more savory, so they'll remind you of some of the vintages in Napa Sonoma, like 2010, 2001, 2000, where there's this really beautiful core of fruit. And I think there'll be wines that age very, very well. I would say among the last 5 year vintages we've had, this may be the longest aging potential we've seen.
Wow.
coming right out of the fermenter. So do come by and taste. And if anyone, we still have 3 tanks left. So if anybody wants to come and help us empty the last 3 tanks, you're welcome to come by.
So if you're not doing anything tomorrow, they're looking for a little bit of labor to help empty some tanks. I like it. Sipsters, thank you so much for joining us on this Veterans Day weekend. Douglas, can't thank you enough. This is SIP episode 146. There are 4 more SIPs remaining. Next week, we have 2 favorites, George Noble from Noble Vines over off of Pritchard Hill, and then also Chef Spencer. We're going to be doing a duo where we're actually going to be talking about how to pair foods specifically with Cabernet Sauvignon. And we're looking forward to seeing George Noble again, and also seeing Chef Spencer, which many of you have never seen. So it'll be a double dip. And I'm looking forward to, because I don't know how to cook all that well. So this is good for me. Douglas, go enjoy some well-earned rest and relaxation after a crazy harvest, and can't thank you enough for everything you do at Knights Bridge and the manner with which you do it. We're indebted to you in this time this evening, and we can't wait for our next visit.
Thank you. And thank you to all the participants, and we'll see you soon.
You got it. Cheers. Be well. Take
Cheers,
care of one
everyone.
another.